everybody. This is Vassals of Kingsgrave, your home for everything nerd. We are discussing today the Lifetime, the Netflix series You, starring Penn, based on some novels that I don't think any of us have read, but we'll get into that later. My name is Bina 007. I'll be your host today, and we will be spoiling everything from season 1 of the show. I am also joined by Sarah.
Hi, Sarah, Lady Weaver on the forums.
By Mary.
Hello, it's Mary on I'm Mary on the forums.
By Jock.
Hello, it's Jock, Monlo Jock 2 on the forums.
And by Thomas.
Hi, Thomas FT Ward on the forums.
And we may be joined by Adam Drowned Snow. And the forums to which we all refer are the forums of a podcast of Ice and Fire, our parent podcast. So if you want to get involved, chat more about you or anything else that you're watching, listening to, or loving right now, then Google a podcast of Ice and Fire and join the forums, and you can do so. So we are here today to discuss You, which is not a show I thought I would ever watch or get into. It's basically a quite sort of trashy crime drama, starring Penn Badgley of not the OC, of Gossip Girl fame, as a bookshop manager. He has a creepy basement in which he occasionally kills people. He sort of spies on girls that he gets really obsessed with and starts stalking them and thinks he's helping them by kind of getting people who are in their way out of the way, to his perception. So it's a very kind of dark, quirky, tongue-in-cheek show. It had 10 episodes, first season's out. It's really bingeable and watchable. I think let's just start off by going around and seeing what everyone's lemon cake ratings are. Unless we have something better than a lemon cake, something more appropriate.
Murders out of 5.
Maybe it's that, what's that hipster
Avocado
drink?
toasts, don't they?
Yeah, avocado toast. I was even thinking that hipster drink that the ex-boyfriend wants to make, that he lures him to his death with a promise of a hookup.
Oh, what was it? Like, what was the name?
Yeah, it was something really, really hipster and annoying.
Artisanal.
Yeah. Well, let's go avocado toast. How many slices of avocado toast out of 5 would you give this show, Thomas?
God, I guess something like 3.75. I mean, it is, as
That's
you say,
very
it's kind
precise.
of trashy, but it also deals with lots of issues in very interesting ways that I don't think a lot of other shows or television shows deal with. So it's hard for me to rate, I guess. I'd be interested what everyone else says.
Yeah, how about you, Mary?
So I was trying to think about this because I think I really enjoyed it while I was watching. I was like quite hooked, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, why did I enjoy it exactly? So maybe a 3.5, I guess. Yeah, that works. It's just I was really hooked, but in a way that I could feel that it was too easy. Like it worked, but it only works if you don't think about it for too long, in a sense.
I think I'm absolutely with you. For me, this is glorious trash, so it's simultaneously a 0 and a 5. Apart from the very ending of the last episode, which we'll get into. But I binge watched it. I was so addicted to it, even as I thought it was ridiculous. But it does work on some level. It does keep you going. Okay, Jock, how about you?
I think I'd go with 3 out of 5. First 3 episodes were great. It sort of died down in the middle, and the last couple of episodes were good.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Sarah, let's go again. See if you're steady. How would you rate this? How would you rate the show?
3.5. As I was saying before when I was cutting out, I watched it over like 2 weeks. I don't think I could binge watch it. And the only reason I really clicked on it was because I was wanting a really dark show to watch, or like a dark movie. And I'm just like this, and I'm like, sounds interesting, let's watch it.
Yeah.
So,
Can I ask if any of you have read the books? Because I haven't. Are any of you familiar with the books? Or book, even?
Nope.
No, I have not, but I'm very curious to see how the perspective in the book would be.
Yeah, it's based on a book by Caroline Kepnes. I think I'm going to order it and give it a go. It sounds like it could be a potentially light read, so I will report back in due course. And I also wanted to ask, are any of you fans, or did any of you watch obsessively as I did Gossip Girl back in the 2000s?
I did not watch it in the 2000s, but I binged it in the 2010s, I guess. I think I posted on the forums about it. So it was back when Mimi was on the forum, so it must have been a long time ago. But I did binge watch Gossip Girl for the course of months, I think.
Anybody else?
I've never
I
watched it
never
actually.
watched it, which, yeah, I never watched it either. And the thing is, I think at that point, when it was really popular, I was either too young, and by the time I was old enough, I wasn't interested in that sort of show anyway. It was more like, yeah, whatever. So,
Yeah, old enough and wise enough not to watch it. I mean, I watched it at the time when it was coming out on TV, and I was probably too old to be that into it because I was in my like early 20s. But what the
no, early
thing
20s is perfect for all shows.
Yeah, I watched it in my early 40s, so I
I
don't know
think
what that says about me.
I think I still kind of want to watch it. It's just that there's so many things that I want to watch. It just never comes first in what am I going to watch today. But part of me at least thinks I will be into it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's on Netflix, and it's a bit for me like the OC that I can occasionally just watch a random episode, and it's quite nostalgic and very
Yeah.
light and easy and really fun. But the reason I asked, and maybe Thomas, you can comment on this, is that I felt part of the reason why I got hooked on this show in episode 1 is that it seemed to me like almost like a fanfic on Gossip Girl. So the premise of Gossip Girl is that Penn Badgley, the lead actor in both shows, plays a guy who's sort of on the outside of what he perceives to be a cooler, idealized world. And he kind of wants to break into it. So in Gossip Girl, he's the poor kid who's the scholarship guy at the rich school, and he wants the flashy rich girl. And a lot of what happens in Gossip Girl is quite voyeuristic on his part, and he's kind of commenting on those characters, kind of passing judgment and insinuating himself into their lives. And it almost felt like this show was kind of like a fanfic that took it to its logical conclusion of him being like a psycho stalker. So I thought the casting was very self-aware. Thomas, do you have any thoughts on that, or was that just me going off on one?
No, I agree completely without spoiling anything for Gossip Girl. I agree completely. For me, the show is like Lolita meets Gossip Girl in the 21st century. And I mean, the same with Gossip Girl. It's a lot of kind of awfulish people doing a lot of awfulish things to each other. But here, it's, as you say, it's taken, which is crazy because Gossip Girl's crazy to begin with, but it's taken up to another several levels over that. But it is an interesting comment on that kind of, quote, sensitive guy that's kind of longing for this girl from a distance. It's kind of a trope we get a lot in film and TV, I guess, and here it's taken to a sinister place, which is I find very interesting.
And maybe it was always sinister. I was watching Shtisel, which is an Israeli TV show set in the Orthodox Jewish community that Mikhail got me into, and I'm so addicted to it, and I really want you all to watch it so we can talk about it.
I've seen the tweets, and I'm like, what are you guys tweeting about, I
It's
guess?
just crazy. I'm so obsessed with that show. But there's a scene that in the episode I just watched where a guy who's in love with a girl is kind of like standing outside of her apartment block with his best friend and say, just look in the window so you can see how pretty she is. And I was like, in the old days, I would have thought that was kind of cute, but now in the kind of post Me Too, I'm a little bit more woke kind of moment. It's like, is this a little bit weird and I think just so much of what we took in Gossip Girl in a more innocent time, you can reframe today now that we're all much more aware. Or maybe I should have been more aware back in the day. And it just comes out as sinister, and this show really runs with that, which I think is really fun. How do
I
you
think just all romantic comedies, even, it kind of reframes a lot of that kind of.
Yeah, like
yeah,
a lot
and
of
Joey
Anyway.
thinks of himself as the lead in a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
And especially like, this is my running through the rain moment as he
Yeah.
goes to her place and breaks a window after breaking up with Karen to be like, no, I want us together.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Like a lot of those rom-com traits of what would have been seen as loving persistence now come across as harassment. Yeah.
It's because a lot of it is harassment and like not taking no for an answer, and it's being portrayed as being endearing, but in actuality it's not. It's very creepy. The thing is, if you don't like the person, pretty much a lot of things that are classified as flirting.
But
can
she
be
doesn't know
very
she likes me yet.
Yeah. It is.
Oh, I just cringe so much. The thing is, I did some looking up in my psychology books and some my law books as well, and like Joe can be done for so much stuff, but And there's actually a thing about people who believe that other people like them. And I got it in the dictionary. Do you want me to reference what book it's from so people at home can find it as well?
Yeah, because we're those kinds of people.
Okay, it's the Oxford Dictionary of Psychology, 4th edition, and we're talking about erotomania.
Ooh.
And it's not the fun one. Well, it has like two definitions.
What's the fun one, Sarah?
Abnormally strong sexual desire, but the other one's the creepy one, which is what we're talking about. And it's a delusion of being loved by another person, often famous person or someone in higher status. People with this disorder usually have little or no direct contact with those they imagine to be in love with them, but frequently, this is the important part, frequently believe that their secret lovers initiated the relationships and communicate their love by gestures, choice of clothing, or other subtle signals, such as handing you their credit card so that you know their name and can go home and stalk them, aka Jock.
That's so horrible.
Like this, I think, entirely encapsulates Joe at the beginning, and how like they want to be noticed. They want me to notice them because of their choice of clothing.
Oh, that's so perfect. It's so on the nose.
It is.
The other theme that I think that's really interesting that we should talk about is how this show treats social media. I think this is the first of, the OC, Gossip Girl, all these kind of like very slick shows that are quite light, but all kind of like relationship driven and aspirational driven. This is the first one that really, really tackles privacy and how much we give away of ourselves, and how that opens the door to this kind of cyber stalking and real life stalking. How do you guys feel about how the show handled that? Because I had already deleted all my social media, but this kind of like really made me want to have deleted it.
I think it's really good because as well it might be an eye-opener for some people that maybe don't take photos in front of your own house, or if you're a YouTuber, take videos in front of your own house so other people can go and find where you live on Google Maps, because I have heard of it happening and it's just like it's not terribly safe. Like do them somewhere else or inside and don't have the view of outside. It's slightly scary.
Yeah, it is.
And that they show it as being so easy on this show might really serve as an eye-opener and be like, oh, maybe don't mention where I am at all times of the day, everywhere.
Or to get changed with your curtains open when you live on like the ground or first floor of something.
The thing is, I have some very serious questions to ask her about how she's affording to live in that place in New York City. And
yes.
Oh yeah, my uni gives me like apartment funding, and I'm just like, yes, but how much funding to afford that place does not make sense.
I think it's a bit like all that aspirational TV, like the people in the OC, well, the OC and Gossip Girl are meant to be in affluent situations, but say when you used to watch Friends, like TV shows in general, and this one in particular, they're selling a kind of lifestyle, but your hair's always perfect and your clothes are always perfect. And the bookstore's just so beautiful, and the basement's this beautiful modernist curation. And what's kind of weird to me about this show is, on the one hand, it's working at that surface level of all those typical Josh Schwartz, Greg Berlanti shows. But on the other hand, it's commenting on it because the Penn Badgley character is explicitly talking about how people curate their lives. Like he says, once he starts stalking her, your life isn't as perfect as you're making out, that actually you're really lonely and insecure. And so it's both creating the fantasy that people try and create, but it's also destroying it, which I find kind of really clever and interesting.
I agree. And I think as well with casting Penn Badgley, how he's already that type of character, and a lot of people know him from Gossip Girl as that type of character, they can really into just how perversive it can be and how everything can look when taken to extremes, and they can really play with things that way. So they're going against trope. Hey, George R.R. Martin, did you write it or cast it?
Jock, Thomas, any thoughts on the whole social media treatment?
I think Gossip Girl, interestingly, which came out like I just looked like in 2007, was kind of touching on this a bit. But as you say, there was this obviously Gossip Girl's kind of the pre-Instagram and everything culture, but this again takes it to another level. And as someone who doesn't really Instagram or do much, I guess, on social media, I don't Facebook or anything, but it is very much kind of commenting on that culture and those people that do that, and it doesn't put them at the same level, obviously, as Joe, but I think it does paint them in an unflattering light as well.
I thought one of the most interesting things is that this is probably the first program or book, I guess, where someone's used social media kind of as a setup for a murder or an alibi, insofar as when he's trying to portray that the ex-boyfriend has committed suicide or had a drug overdose. He hijacks his social media and shows him more and more partying out of control and getting more drunk and being more on narcotics, and kind of lays the groundwork for him to disappear. I think that's the first time I might have seen that.
Yeah.
And I
And
consume a lot of murder
continuing to use
mystery
his
types.
phone
Sorry,
and
can you
to
say that?
message and continuing to use his phone to make it look like he's still alive by posting things as well for a
Yeah.
long period after he's
Is it
actually dead.
possible? Like, you know, when he takes Guinevere Beck's phone, like when she falls into the subway and he takes the phone, but she thinks she's lost it, so she gets a new one, but his phone is still live, so he can still see all her messaging and stuff. Is that possible? Can you take someone's old phone?
If you do like Facebook Messenger and stuff like that, yes, because it's all logged into an app, not actually text messaging. So yes.
It felt weird to me, like too easy. That's the case with a lot of those stalking moments. Like it did feel too easy. But what I found interesting as well is that it also makes a comment on the fact that like, it takes time to actually be on all of those social media and like be active, and it takes a lot of time, which is kind of crazy when you see. I mean, it is crazy, just the time you spend on those. And I don't think I've watched a show where one of the characters is actually a professional Instagrammer. I don't even remember the name of her friend who does that.
Annika?
Oh, Peach.
Yeah, Annika.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Annika. Yeah, like Peach is. I don't know what she does, but Annika. Yeah.
Peach is old money, Rich.
Yeah.
That's what Peach is.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think if you're listening to this and you haven't watched the show, you should stop listening because we're going to spoil it. But it's actually, I think it's one of the most compelling reasons to watch the show is how it deals with that whole cyber stalking thing. And if it, at the margin it convinces anyone to be a bit more careful, that's a good thing. But that idea of being the perfect boyfriend by doing research it's quite an old rom-com trope. The idea of,
knowing
I
your
mean,
target.
it's not like it is really creepy. We've said that, but like whenever I meet someone new, and I feel like maybe I would be interested in knowing that person better. It's like I'm not stalking them, but I will go take a look on their Facebook and see what they like. It's not at the same level, obviously, but I think it's something that most of us do now.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
What they like, or as well as what are they like? Like, not just what do they like, but also what are they as a person like as well. Like,
yeah.
true. And
It's just a level of degree, and I think there's a kind of a passive watching, and obviously like you're looking at an art gallery, aren't you? Like what people put on their Facebook and Twitter is for you to see. So I think that's kind of part of the understood social exchange. But there's the level to which Penn Badgley's character Jo then tries to kind of manipulate her life, which is where you start seeing it go to that next level of intrusion, which is obviously where it's weird. And I wonder how, I mean, not to the point of killing people, right? But I wonder how far that does become part of subconsciously modern dating, that sort of that slight, if I post this, then she'll see that and maybe think, like I wonder how much we are bleeding to that more sort of activist way of using social media. And I don't know, that's kind of concerning to me.
You already have it and have had it for years that people will do posts about someone and like they'll never mention them, but they'll like rant about something that happened with them that day, and you can tell it's clearly meant to be at a specific person.
So passive aggressive.
Yes. So I don't think it's necessarily that weird that it's bleeding over into dating culture. Like it's.
How did you guys find the plotting? So should we discuss, I guess maybe there's a main plot and a subplot, right? So maybe let's do bizarrely the subplot first, because that might be quicker. So in the TV show, which I think maybe is not in the book, according to what Sarah was posting earlier, Joe lives next
Yeah.
door to a little kid called Paco, who's in a really bad situation because his mum is dating someone who's evidently violent, and it's a really unhealthy situation, but the mum won't kick the guy out. She's very codependent on him, and Joe feels like he's protecting Paco, giving him a safe space, and eventually will take very extreme measures to try and protect Paco. How did you find that storyline, the way it was acted and depicted? And if it is a genuine new inclusion, why do you think the TV writers decided to put that in when they made the show?
Well, it helps to sort of sympathise Joe a lot more
Yeah.
than he would otherwise. And it's also a bit sort of terrifying, especially with the flashbacks of the other guy doing the same for him.
Mr. Mooney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really, I think it's definitely in there so we can see why Joe is the way he is, or like why he might be the way he is.
Yeah, like the Dexter flashbacks.
Definitely. And as well, it's, to be perfectly honest, it's that subplot that made it so this cast had a lot of its diversity. Amber posted in one of the group chats we had about the show, because we mentioned a different show, and she said she'd started watching this one, and she felt that there wasn't much diversity at all, which, to be perfectly honest, the show doesn't really have, especially not with the lead characters. All of the diverse characters, most of them have very minor roles.
Yeah,
Apart from
Peaches is half Filipino, the actress is, no? So I suppose there's some diversity there, but
a lot of.
and Annika, but I guess it's not the lead. I thought it was actually pretty
Annika's
diverse.
wife, wasn't it? Lynn?
Yeah. That's a good point, though. But then again, I think you should give the show some kudos for the fact that it does have this subplot, which is very diverse. And then you also have
well, it's a good representation of people and like why they'll put up with abuse, because of what the mum says to Joe later on, being like she had to, because Ron was manipulating her and abusing his power as an enforcement officer over her.
Yeah, because he's a parole
she's an
officer.
addict, right? And he will have he will have Paco taken away from her because she's an addict also.
Yeah. So she's in a really difficult position.
Yeah,
for sure.
really difficult.
Yeah. Just before we leave the topic of diversity, I just wanted to point out that the show also features Harry Neff, who's an amazing actress who also stars in American Assassins. Is that the film? Which I had real problems with, but I thought Harry Neff was like by far the best person in it. So, like, another aspect of diversity is casting a trans actress, which I think is really good. She's the grad student that's like really perfect and that Bet gets really insecure about. So
so
that's just worth
ultimately,
pointing out.
Yeah, Blythe and Ethan are ultimately like the true romantic comedy pair in the show. I think they are.
Yeah, they are. They really are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they give me hope.
By the way, Ethan's my favorite character in the whole thing, and I think he's pretty much the only good character by the end of it.
He's just a lovely person, right?
Yeah, he is.
He seems so lovely, and it's just like, I'm so happy you're happy. Like, good on you.
Yeah,
just be careful of your boss, but like, you're great.
Don't go down into the basement alone.
Please.
But one thing I would say about, I'm sorry.
No, please go.
I was just going to say about diversity. I think it's Beck's friend group is the main source, and maybe, I don't know how realistic or not, but that they're wealthy, white, mostly people, and there's a moment where Annika is commenting, or she's caught commenting about race a little bit, and maybe just that group is insular and not diverse to begin with.
Yeah, and isn't that the point? I mean, you could argue that the show's making a very specific point, which is that Joe, the book guy, lives in a very diverse city. There's diversity in where you live and who you hang out with and who's in school, but that Guinevere Beck is quite pretentious, and she's trying to run with a crowd that's richer and pretend she has more money. And that crowd, of necessity, because diversity is very linked to sort of income inequality as well, that does become like a self-selecting, less diverse crew. Sorry, the movie I mentioned before with Harry Neff isn't American Assassins, it's Assassination Nation. Correct myself as I go. Do you think the TV show is making a comment about aspirational culture, or is that just me getting obsessive?
I think it definitely is, right?
Especially with Annika, how everything they had it was ripped away from her so quickly because someone posted an old video. So, like, yes, she's doing great up until someone posted something that shows her in a negative light. So it might be more of a it might look great, however, it doesn't necessarily last, possibly as well.
We've dealt with the Paco storyline, which I think it is quite touching and really well handled. Let's get to the main ones. So first of all, we meet Joe. He gets obsessed with Guinevere Beck. Okay, Joe's like a psycho, obviously. How do you guys feel about Guinevere Beck? Did you become more sympathetic to her as you realised some of her insecurities and issues, or did she get on your last nerve? Like, what are the feelings about Beck?
I think she's very entitled.
Agree.
So, especially when she complains about getting fired from the yoga studio for falling asleep in the middle of it. Pretty much, so she doesn't do her job properly and she complains about getting fired from it. And I'm just like, bro, that's kind of your own fault. And if you're getting fired from it, it's quite possibly not the first time as well. It might just be the last straw.
She struck me as the kind of person who would expect that she would have a stalker because she's so fabulous.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because she's like we see her and we also see her through Joe, who's obviously so obsessed that it's not a fair vision of her. And there's like this whole myth about how fabulous she is and she needs time to write and to be in the right conditions, and if I find the inspiration, and I'm not really a creative person, so maybe I just don't really get the whole thing, but it was kind of a gap between what we see of her sometimes. So this messy girl, like fairly normal girl, like she hasn't figured it all out. She's trying to find her place, and that's okay. And the fabulous future writer that she hopes she will be, or that Joe, the way Joe sees her. I think it's interesting because when you think about it, she's not that interesting as a character. I mean, she's not so special.
Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah.
Which is the whole point, yeah.
Yeah.
She wants to be special and thinks she should be special.
Just like Joe. I mean, I think they're both that way. They both think they're special people.
Mm-hmm.
I guess a lot of the characters do, except maybe Ethan.
I mean, Joe is special, right?
Well, I hope.
Not the way he thinks he's special, though.
But I think in a sense, like, Beck is kind of relatable. I think all of us want to think we're a little bit special, don't we? And that's why Facebook and that whole sort of like social media narcissism it's created has been so successful. And it's kind of, and the whole selfie culture, it's unleashed something in us. But actually, we're all kind of ordinary, and that's why there's the curation and the perfection that goes on, like the perfecting of our lives, because we realize that kind of like the ordinary selves just aren't quite cutting it. And I think there's a real like deep social societal pathology there. So I sympathize with Beck because I too am very ordinary, but would like to think behind the center of the universe. I just think it's a really honest performer. Like she's not that likable, and I think it's kind of admirable that they went there with their lead character. Like she's not the kind of, perfect pixie manic dream girl that Serena van der Woodsen was in Gossip Girl, right? She is just normal and does stupid shit, and
I completely agree.
I really love that. They were just like, you might think she's this manic pixie dream girl, but in reality, she's not. She has flaws like everyone else. Like,
is it admirable that Joe still loves her when he realizes she's ordinary and it's all curated for the screen?
He knew walking in that it was all curated for the screen, and he says that in his own monologue. He's just like, you want everyone to think this. You need everyone to think this. So, yeah.
How do we feel about the monologue?
He does it so well, like the actor, perfect.
I think that's directly a comment on Gossip Girl in the monologue there, without going further and spoiling stuff. I think it's brilliant too. I love it. It's so arch.
See, that's what reminds me of Lolita, is that first-person perspective where you don't really know. Ultimately, it's different in a book, I guess, than a TV show where you're seeing stuff. But he's so unreliable as a narrator. There's a point where you don't really know what's real and what's unreal because he's so unreliable, and that he's crazy and he's delusional, and ultimately.
Well, He's
getting a
unreliable in
lot.
one sense, but he's reliable insofar as he's communicating his truth to us truthfully, right? It's just that
Yeah, but
his
he's
truth is delusional.
also.
But he's not trying
To
to
the point
mislead
of
us.
hallucinating at certain points, even. But
Yeah, but there are unreliable narrators where like they are deliberately trying to trick us as the audience. I don't think he's trying to trick us. It's just that he himself is delusional, which is I think a subtle difference. How did you all feel about the characters in Guinevere Beck's posse? Forgettable, interesting, blah. I don't know. I was kind of blah about them. Did you find it believable that her like best mate was secretly also obsessed with her and rivaling Joe and was probably kind of secretly gay? I don't know. I found that all a bit weird.
I found it very weird.
I found Annika kind of interesting. She's not a character that I've kind of seen before in a lot of things. And Peach was just strange in her kind of aggressive antagonism and stuff. And I didn't ever click with her as a character, I guess. And then we get this kind of lesbian stalker subplot, which I didn't know how to unpack, I guess. And then the Lynn girl, is that the other one? I thought she
Yeah.
was totally forgettable.
She was just there to fill a space, I think.
Yeah, once Peach was gone, I think they needed someone else to be in conversations.
Yeah, that was definitely
Kind
the
of
weak
sad.
part of the show for me. It felt kind of a bit underwritten and
Yeah, but aren't they
interesting.
supposed to be kind of just like disposable
Pass.
people?
Oh, so you think it's a comment on those characters' superficiality and essential worthlessness rather than bad writing?
Maybe I'm crediting them too much, but yeah, that's how I took it.
Huh, interesting. Okay.
It really could be. Like I thought that as well, and how they aren't as involved in Beck's life, so you don't see as much of them, especially because we're seeing almost all of it from Joe's perspective. So
Yeah, really good point. Okay. And then let's move on to the therapist, which I don't know if any of you listened to Mikal's in Kazreen's other podcast she does called Nice Jewish Fangirls, but not maybe the latest episode, one of the most recent episodes, they had on a guest who was herself a practicing psychiatrist. And she was talking about depictions of mental illness in pop culture. And one of the things that most annoys her is when people start sleeping with their clients because it's so unprofessional. So how do you feel about the depiction of mental illness in therapy and clinician relationships in this show? Sarah, over to you as someone who's closest to it than anyone.
clinician relationships, so unprofessional, incredibly unprofessional. Please have your license revoked, please.
I also thought it was weird that he didn't figure out that Penn Badgley was also new
Yeah.
Beck because the situations he was giving him were so similar.
Like they were complete mirror images of each other's relationships, and it wasn't
Yeah.
like, this sounds like so similar to one of my other clients, and never thought that. Most of them.
It was
Okay.
weird.
But
The whole thing, I
he-
mean, I've been seeing a psychiatrist for a long part of my life. I mean, and it always, I mean, it was a little uncomfortable that it was depicted in such unprofessional and weird way where Joe is kind of manipulating this guy who really seems like he hasn't like, why are you doing this again? And so I know psychiatrists are people and they also have lives and they also have flaws and all of that. But it was kind of a weird, I wasn't very comfortable with that depiction, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was refreshing at first when he thought that, or when they weren't having an affair, or when he thought they weren't having an affair, because they kind of show all the older men in the show are kind of shown very predatory, I think, like the professor and the record executive. I don't know, he's a little bit younger, but like all these men in power positions, the father, the uncle, all this stuff are shown like, I think, very predatory and
Hashtag not all men. Yeah, I
well,
agree.
I don't know. I don't want to say that, but it's
No, but I think it's true, right? Like
sad.
literally
It's
all the
very
old man.
sad.
Yeah, exactly. There's no good shining light of an older guy.
Ethan's the only good guy.
Yeah, but he's young. So.
Yeah.
I know. Well, he might be like 30, but it might be the beard aging him, so I don't know. But 30 is old to me, by the way. It might not be that. Sorry. And it's getting closer every day. Okay.
Yeah.
I wish.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you guys feel about the depiction of violence in this show? Or lack thereof?
I thought it was interesting that Joe, like when you first see him being violent with Benji, you can see that it's like not something he's used to do, and it's like in this way it was refreshing from like shows like Dexter or stuff like that, where he kills someone but then he has no idea what to do. He has to rely on books to figure out how he's gonna get rid of the body, and even when he attacks Peach, he's like, "Oh my god, did I do that?" And it's just you can see that he's not planning this
And when he
very
gives
well.
Paco, the little kid, the shopping list of like stuff
Oh my god.
to kill, how
It's
to
not
like
even like
dispose of a
here's one
body.
list and then later on here's another list and go like over a period of time. It's like no,
It's just-
but
He's quite incompetent.
Yeah.
He's not a master criminal. This is all impulsive stuff that he does. I don't know how the Peach suicide worked, because I feel like his DNA is in the yard too, and
Yeah.
all
she,
over the place.
yeah, I don't know how he got away with that. I guess I feel like the gun fired like multiple rounds and he was shot, so there's a blood trail from him, and then she killed herself in the middle of the yard or something.
And I
It
mean, he
just-
spent like 24 hours
Yeah.
hiding in that house. There's got to be traces
Trace,
of him.
yeah.
Like he was bleeding. He was hallucinating. He was like not. Yeah, it was a bit too
No,
easy.
okay. With him and his violence, okay, one, how can you kidnap someone and not expect anything violent to happen when you are questioning them about something?
Mhm.
That's Benji. And then you kill them in a stupid way by giving them peanuts. When personally, sorry, when I was watching it, I'm just like, you have his drugs, just have him have a drug overdose and then dump his body somewhere he would actually frequent, and then everyone will think he just died of a drug overdose and you don't have to worry. Like, what are you doing? Seriously, so silly.
Yeah. Maybe he'll get better in season 2 with
Hopefully.
practice.
And with burning the body, I'm just like, why didn't you take some pork and say you're cooking pork? Because isn't human supposed to smell like meat? So just say you're eating pork and cooking pork.
But to cook my little one pork chop in the middle of the night, I needed a bonfire the size of like
Yeah, I
my
think it's-
lounge.
And say you're having a late night snack and then you also have marshmallows and hot chocolate and pretend you're camping there. Like, anything. I'm so annoyed with it. I'm really annoyed.
Okay. Speaking of
And
being
with
annoyed, oh sorry, carry on.
Okay, and with the police officer, when he has his car crash, pretending that he didn't have a car crash, why not just say, hey, I actually had a car crash, it's just a minor one, it's fine though, I'm a bit hurt, and like no one will think anything of it anyway. Like, it's just like, bro, why are you lying about things that you don't actually need to lie about? Oh, I'm so annoyed.
I think there would have had to been like forms filled out or something like that. Whereas if he's this kind of small town, rich area where probably the residents can get away, the police don't really bother the rich people that live there. I think he can more easily get away by pretending to be someone he's not. But I agree, it was weird and kind of unnecessary, I thought.
Very necessary, because he could have just gone home and then called back and be like, I got in a car crash, come home, take care of me. And she possibly would have. And then you get the same end and you don't have to kill Peach.
Indeed.
Yeah, that was the funny, because like he had kind of won there against Peach, like Beck chose him over Peach and then he murders Peach, and then that throws her into a spiral in which Peach actually has more control over her after she died than she did, I think, there.
But it does help her create art.
Yes, so pretty.
So speaking of frustration, shall we talk about the very, very final scene of the first season?
Yes.
Because now, if you really haven't watched this, you should really stop listening right now. Okay, switch off. Okay, so for the whole season, we hear him refer to an earlier girlfriend called Candace, and I think as we go through, we assume that he's killed her too, as a kind of precursor to Beck, so this is a pattern. And then after he's killed Beck, in the final scene of the first season, she turns up in the bookstore, which to me seemed kind of odd. And a kind of what the fuck moment. I did not approve. I actually thought this would have just been a nice one season show, actually. How about y'all?
Yeah, it was supposed to be one season, I think, but I think it was Netflix which was requested more.
Oh, really? But the thing is, so Sarah, do you want to talk about what you posted in the forums? Because there is a way to a second season without bringing back Candace, right?
Oh, about how the end of the book happened?
Yeah.
Okay, so I did some Googling about the book to get to a summary for it, to try to see if it does end the way it does in the show and how it ends. And on Book Rags, they have a summary and a study guide description of you. And the last paragraph of it is, so at the end of the novel, a new girl called Amy Adam walks into the bookstore and Joe becomes obsessed with her just as he was obsessed with Beck. In other words, it's a repeating cycle. So in the show, they've had it where Candace walks in, who's his ex-girlfriend, and we all think, or I definitely presumed she was dead and murdered, and it's a repeating pattern. But instead, they've decided to have it as Candace walking back in. So we're going to have flashbacks probably in the next season and discuss all of that and figure that out.
I mean, in a way it makes sense, right? Because if he just had another rando girl and he had to replay Guinevere Beck but less incompetent, is that interesting? So I can see how they might have felt they needed to bring Candace back, but I just thought, that's kind of weird. And if she was alive all this time, why didn't she kind of turn him in? And it doesn't make sense to me.
I know. Okay, with Candace, I think they should have had her as dead, and then you could have it as he did something to Mr. Mooney, which is why he's in the nursing home and doesn't speak anymore. And he actually tried to kill Mooney, and he's now mentally impaired because of it. And then you can have that underground story going, and it's like he's still doing all of the same things with a new girl, but you also have the subplot of Mr. Mooney and people trying to figure out why he's now suddenly mentally impaired and who did that, and he gets caught for that, which would work as well. And you don't need to bring Candace back.
Yeah, do that. That makes more sense. How do the rest of you feel? Mary, thoughts on the ending?
Yeah, I thought I didn't think Candace was dead. Actually, I did think he was telling the truth, but that might have been because I just wanted to believe him, as if somehow that would change anything. Maybe Candace isn't dead, but we definitely saw him kill. I mean, at least 2, 3
4
other people. Yeah, 4 people. All right, 4. Oh, yeah. So
he's actually
it's 4. So yeah, I don't know. I think at that point I was just a bit annoyed that Beck died, but there wasn't really any other way out except for him to be caught. And I was like, ugh, Candace. Yeah, I thought it would have been more interesting if it was just a random girl coming into the bookshop and the story repeating itself. So I'm not very much into it.
Yeah, I thought it would have been a really good one-season show and cut random girl. Like, you have the finger trailing like they have at the very end and then fade to black and it's done, especially because they have the same voiceover that was happening at the very beginning. It would have been perfect.
How about you, Jock? Any thoughts on the ending?
Yeah, I don't like that Joe survived, or didn't get caught at least. I think they could have actually done an interesting sort of season if he did get caught and he's just sort of forced to confront his obsessions and so forth.
So does this alter or maybe it doesn't alter, how do you feel about watching season 2? Do you feel the need to watch season 2?
Not really.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, right? I really enjoyed season 1. It really gave me a lot of joy. It sparked joy, in the words of Mary Kondo. But I feel I'm good. I feel I'm good with it, unless, reviews turn out to be amazing. How about you, Thomas? Do you feel you'll persist? Are you a completionist? Once you're in, you got to finish?
Well, I guess, has anyone seen the Barry on HBO television show with Bill Hader?
Oh, yeah, I started it, but I didn't really get into it. It just didn't spark joy for me.
Oh, Henry Winkler sparks joy for me. But that's the way I feel about Barry. I guess at the end of season 1, I have zero interest in spending any more time with those people. But here, I guess I would be curious at least. I agree with what pretty much everyone else said, that I think it's, as a show, it would have been much more satisfying just to be a one-season show. But if they're going to have a second season, I will definitely give it a chance and see where it's going, I guess. But a show like Barry, I have no interest in watching a second season of. But I guess it's a similar, where the protagonist is kind of a killer who may or may not be evil or whatever, without spoiling Barry. But here, I guess I'm interested to see where it goes. And I guess I've read or seen that they're moving to California in the second season, but I don't know if that's accurate. But
What's
I
he
will
going to
miss.
do without his basement book
Yeah, what's he
clubbing?
gonna do without Ethan? I don't
Yeah.
know. That'll be
Get a
but
new basement.
Definitely not watching if there's no Ethan. I think, let's be real. What's going to happen is as soon as it appears on the Netflix front page, I'm not going to watch it immediately like I would with Mrs. Maisel or the shows I'm really into, but I'll get to some about 3 months later, Sunday afternoon, where I'm really bored and there's nothing on, and I end up binge watching it over like 2 days. It'll happen. It just maybe won't happen immediately.
if it's 10 episodes, I will definitely. I can't imagine not watching it at some point.
Exactly. My life's not that exciting that I can't make 10 episodes show.
I'm not that special, so.
Exactly. That's like the message of this book. None of us are that special. Oh dear. Any other comments, themes, ideas, characters that we didn't talk about already?
Yes. Okay. Joe's actually a serial killer by the end of this.
Yeah,
By
he
the
is.
FBI definition.
Because isn't the
Because
FBI,
he-
it's just 3 or more?
It's 3 or more murders over more than a month period, with a cooling down period between each murder, and his murder spree has been over a year.
Yeah, so the definition of cooling
Just
down
spree?
is in there, so you're not a spree killer. You're definitely a serial killer.
Yeah. So he is definitely a serial killer by the end, and he still does not think of himself as a killer or a murderer.
No, he's a lover, not a
He-
fighter.
Yeah,
Like Jamie, he
doesn't-
did it all for love,
What
right?
is that?
Things
Yes.
I do for love.
Actually, I think Joe actually thinks that at one point in this, and I'm like, Jamie Lannister? What?
I guess we should talk. Isn't there like a media controversy about people being attracted to or sympathetic to Joe? I haven't fully followed it, but I know
Is there a controversy?
Penn Badgley is
How?
kind of.
How can you be sympathetic to Joe?
I don't know. I mean, well, there are people that marry serial killers in prison and stuff, so I don't think it's too but that he's kind of a sex symbol, and that's kind of troubling.
I find it weird that he's even a sex symbol, frankly. So,
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, Pan.
I was always more of a Nate guy on Gossip Girl myself.
Yeah, Nate's really good looking. That's why.
Funny.
Exhibiting taste there, Thomas. Oh my word. Anything else on You? It's a really stupid name for a TV show because every time you like try and Google stuff about it, like typing in You into Google isn't helpful. So you have to put You TV show, Penn Badgley. I mean, that's marketing fail right there.
I just do You 2018, that works, because it was made and that's the only thing that came out.
Although the phrase "Voc You" does like bring me joy.
Is that going to be the title? Voc
Yeah,
You
clearly.
brings me joy.
Yeah, sparks joy. Okay.
I kind of want to talk about Joe and Karen, and how Karen just accepted being broken up with and Joe was fully expecting to be slapped. I think Karen actually knows personally, or suspects, which is why she's just like, easy out, I'm going, packed up everything, is just like, I'm done, cool.
Suspects
Doesn't
he's a
look back,
killer?
is just like, I'm
Or a stalker.
Yeah, or like he's stalking her, or like killing people, because I think he also she tries to warn Beck when she sees her at one point as well. So I do think she at least thinks he might be.
That totally
maybe
passed me
doesn't
by.
know, but yeah, I kind of think she might, whether she found the box as well, because Paco might have come by and told her too about stuff in the ceiling, or like, Joe's not exactly careful, so
He's messy as well.
oh,
Yeah,
messy.
I think she just knows that he's still hung up on his ex-girlfriend, kind of. I don't think she, at least I don't think she suspects he's a murderer or evil or anything.
I think she might. I really do.
We will find out in season 2. It'd be a way to make season 2 really interesting.
Come back.
Yeah.
Like, Paco can come back and bite him in the butt, because Paco knows that he killed Ron and then that he hid it. It's not even like he killed Ron and then he could have said it was self-defense, which it was, like defense of another, so defense of Paco. So he could play that down easily, very easily, to get a far lighter sentence. So it's quite possible he would have been fine, but he decided to hide it. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Well, I'll be interested if season 2 is in California, if it's Paco based again, if he follows them there, or if Paco needs him or something. I'd be interested to see if they're
Well, maybe
central.
if the girlfriend knew in some way, shape, or form, that's a reason for him to leave state and go to the other side of the country. That would maybe motivate the move. Things are getting a little bit too hot close to home. But if so, he's going to have to do a massive cleanup of that basement and all the genetic evidence that's lying around. That's going to need a lot of, detergent and bleach and shit.
Presumably he's already cleaned from when he killed Beck there in that spot and Benji, so he could possibly just leave it as is, because it's not strange that Beck's DNA would be over the place because she did come there, she was his girlfriend.
True.
It's very normal. Benji's DNA, that's a bit fishy.
Yeah, good point. Just
That'd
means
be
there'll
a
be no
great serial
Ethan.
killer. Ethan's in film too.
No, but Ethan's in love. Okay.
Well, she can come as well because she needs new space, more stuff for her ideas for writing. Like, needs to get her juices flowing so she moves.
As long as her
And Ethan
MFA
comes
is
to her as
finished.
Joe.
Yeah. Oh, that makes me sad. Okay. Alrighty then. Well, this was a cool little concise discussion of VOCU. I enjoyed this series. I hope people watch it. I think it's funny. I think it's clever and
You think
subversive.
it's funny?
Yeah, I do. I think maybe it's because I watched Gossip Girl, but I think there was a lot in the way that, like, darkly funny in the way he was doing the voiceover that was very referential to that. Yeah, I thought it was a nasty, kind of quite funny series. Really.
See, it just me of Gone Girl. Like, that's what it reminds me of most, but I haven't seen Gossip Girl at all, so.
Oh, I think Gone Girl's Gone Girl's really nasty and it's not funny at all, but it's just extreme.
I remember seeing that film. It was
This
terrible.
one's funny.
Yeah, the Rosamund Pike character maybe, but yeah.
Oh, I
I need
love
to watch
this
that
film.
again. Yeah, I love that film too. It's so good.
So good, so good.
But again, very self-referential in its casting. I mean, having Ben Affleck in that lead role, I think, was very clever on so many
And
levels.
having Rosamund Pike, who, like, she was in Pride and Prejudice, the Keira Knightley one, as Jane, so the pretty perfect one.
Yeah,
And then her playing the pretty perfect one later on. being the
exactly.
cool girl.
Very just meta clever. I love stuff like that. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully we have sparked joy today. Thank you to my co-hosts Thomas, Mary, Sarah, and Jock. Apologies, Adam, that you couldn't dial in. And hopefully, well, you never know, we might be back with VOCU the sequel if we all watch season 2. But if not, I definitely think we should do a nostalgia watch of Gossip Girl, especially if Mary or Sarah get around to eventually watching
Netflix,
it.
By the way.
Yeah,
That's where I watched it. Yeah.
exactly.
I might watch it, and it's finished, so I can just binge it all. So.
Yeah.
There's a lot, trust me.
6 seasons to binge, I'm not sure, but...
Yeah, if you think you get slow in the middle, then you're in for a treat with Gossip Girl. 6 seasons of that.
Yeah, there are better seasons than others, put it that way.
I can just put it on, and I don't have to watch it.
That's what I did, yeah.
So, it's cool.
That's perfect. That's the kind of show we all need from time to time.
Exactly, just to wash out the brain a little bit.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, have a great weekend, everyone. And
thanks, Bina. You too.
Speak to you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Right tonight.